Hello, college football fans. Yeah, Urban Steak with Tim May, yours truly. Urban Steak is back. Urban, welcome back to your show, my man.
Always great to be with you, Tim.
Absolutely, man. By the way, we're Fox Big Noon Kickoff. Where's it going this week? I think it's going to Notre Dame, isn't it? Are you fired up?
Oh, I'm really fired up. Yeah, that's normally we lead into our game, but obviously, I have Brady Quinn, Matt Leinart, a huge game in South Bend, one that
Yeah.
I coached in that rivalry for 5 or 6 years, and really, I've been to Notre Dame since I left there a handful of times in 2000. But what a great place!
Oh yeah, absolutely. As I say, if you find one, send me a picture of a dandelion on their on all of their grass. It's crazy how well kept that place is. And you know that famous line about Joe Namath. He was recruited by Notre Dame along with several other schools back in 1960, and his only reason he didn't go there was it wasn't co-ed then, and he didn't want to swim a lake to get to his date. So College of Lake St. Mary. But anyway, I digress. Hey, real quick, before we move into what we really want to talk about here, uh, is this a bigger game for Notre Dame or USC this Saturday from the standpoint of, Notre Dame is kind of like out of the running here now for the college football playoff with two losses, yet Marcus Freeman and his group are fighting for their, I don't know, their credibility for want of another term in a lot of people's minds, but USC, is it finally going to play some defense? I mean, it's kind of on USC this week, isn't it?
It is, but I coached at Notre Dame, and one of the problems with not being in a conference, and I've talked to Brady Quinn about this,
Yeah.
and it's real, is, you know, the human element is about being inspired and motivated to play. And at Notre Dame, I don't know how much has changed, but when Lou Holtz hired me, we had a mission to go win a national title. And when that mission, and that's all we talked about, and when that became no longer real, motivation became a problem.
Yeah.
And that's where other schools, whether you lose a game or not, you still got a chance to go to the Rose Bowl. You still got a chance to win a conference championship. You still, everybody, myself included, you play for a ring. A lot of reasons, but that darn ring, that means something. And Notre Dame, I've got 3 or 4 rings from Notre Dame, but none of them say national champion. They say Gator Bowl, they say Fiesta Bowl, and that's not the same. And
Yeah.
so I worry a little bit about they have 2 losses. Last week was a bad loss. That was a tough one.
Yeah.
And USC is playing, they're playing for a playoff spot. So the motivation I would put, you know, probably on USC, but then I don't know the inner workings of, I think Marcus Freeman, obviously I know him. I don't know him that well, but I got a lot of respect for him. I used to tell our coaches this all the time. This is when you earn those stripes on your sleeve that say coach.
Yeah.
Just like military, how do you earn those stripes? You don't have to motivate when you're playing your rival and you're both 10-0 or 11-0. Now you have to be creative in your motivation.
Well, hey, let's get into some things that include a place where you coached and coached to a national championship, Ohio State. You had 3 national championships, 2 at Florida, but the one at Ohio State. And just, you were at the game last week against Maryland in the stadium. Saw you with your grandson. That had to be cool as heck. But then on top of that, you watched Ohio State, especially in that first half, really struggle to get something going offensively. And I don't know, or offensive line play is hit or miss, it looks like, across the country now. And you brought this up on the Fox Big Noon Kickoff show a couple of weeks ago, that one of the things that stood out to you about several of these Pac-12 teams that have, I don't know if surprised people, but playing extremely well is you see some, big time offensive lines and offensive line play going on there. And I'm just wondering, how spotty is offensive line play this year across the country, of either having a pretty good one or one that's still struggling?
Well, that was the issue with the Pac-12 for so many years. We played USC in the Cotton Bowl. We played Washington in the Rose Bowl, and you get all their film, and you have time to break it down. And we felt the offensive line play, back when Pete Carroll and Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush and the national champions, and they had I asked Matt, every one of those players got drafted.
Yeah.
We felt as we got ready, both sides of the ball, they were good, but not, there certainly weren't Georgia, Alabama, at Ohio State level. The skill was, and the quarterbacks were great, but the offensive and defensive line were a big downgrade compared to what we were playing with.
Yeah.
I watched the Pac-12 now, and we're going to, as they get interconference player throughout the best teams, like we're going to find out about Washington, Oregon this week. But
Yeah.
It's a much improved offensive line play and defensive line play. And Ohio State right now, we knew it would be a work in progress. 3 new starters. The quality of player there is still yet to be determined because it's still early. And because you're down or you're in a street fight with a 5-0 Maryland team, I wouldn't panic. But you got some big dudes coming up. Penn State is no joke on defense now. They are really, really good.
Yeah. That
team in Ann Arbor, I'm telling you, man, you keep trying to find a flaw. Now the flaw is the schedule. It's certainly not their personnel or the coordinators are doing a really good job. All 3 phases are playing at a high level. But Ohio State to win a championship, they're going to have to be marked improvement in the offensive line.
Yeah, the thing that stood out about as you call it, the team in Ann Arbor, and I have to, for editorial purposes, call it Michigan. Actually, I don't have to, but I do. They have beaten teams the way they should beat them, though. I mean, there's something to be said about that, right? I mean, that they are showing up ready to take care of business, right?
There's a lot to be said to that. And that means your team's well coached, your team's prepared, and there must be really good leadership on the team. Well, they do. They got a very veteran team.
Yeah.
They're doing exactly, and they're doing it very impressive. To go on the road to Nebraska, I actually said that game might be close. It wasn't close.
Yeah.
I thought Nebraska's defense would hang in there a little bit, but they didn't. And then, Minnesota's not a walk in the park. That's a tough place to go play. But we all know it's going to come down to a 3-game series, which, by the way, we have them all on Fox. Our team will be there.
Yeah.
And at Penn State and then Ohio State up there. So they're doing what they're supposed to do.
Hey, speaking of the Ohio State offensive line, though, how long do you go into a season and still call it a work in progress? Do you follow me there? I mean, 5 games in, should the offensive line with 3 new starters on it, but we knew that, in January, that was going to be the case. How long can you call it a work in progress, and how long do you go without maybe shakeups? I mean, you dealt with those challenges in your coaching career many times. I mean, what is kind of the timeline there?
Well, it's every week. If there was a possibility to make them better with the personnel change, you do it. By now, you do it. But my understanding is there's depth issues there as well.
Yeah.
So when there's lack of depth, there's lack of competition. You settle for average play, and that's a bad deal. When you have depth and you have competition and you have people fighting, scratching, clawing, the receiver position. For the last several years, if you don't play well, there's a guy behind you that's going to be an NFL high draft pick. So you better play well.
Yeah.
When you're a position group that doesn't have that, something coming from behind you, we're all human. You become comfortable. Comfortable is a 4-letter word in the game of football. You can't be comfortable. And the greatest discomfort is you don't play well, you're going to sit the bench. And I don't know if they have that luxury right now.
Hey, speaking of Ohio State, they're going to Purdue this week. You remember going to Purdue in 2018?
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, exactly. That's like, I just stepped on a thorn again. But the way Purdue took care of business that night, Urban, the first year I started covering Ohio State full time was 1984. Ohio State went over there undefeated, I think ranked number 2 or 3 in the country. It might have been higher than that. And Purdue upsets them with Jim Everett. And that game was known for a lot of things, but the main thing was Ohio State was driving in the late minutes, and Mike Tomczak threw the ball out of bounds to stop the clock on a 4th down, and Ohio State ends up losing that game. Is there such a thing in your mind as jinxes or of teams being spooked in certain matchups, et cetera? I mean, it seems real because, boy, Ohio State has had some really tough losses at Purdue over the years that kind of came out of nowhere.
No, it's all about the players and the coaches. I don't think any of the coaches. Maybe Ryan was there. Coach Day was there.
Yeah, Josh Proctor. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I don't believe that. They could care less about the Mike Tomczak throw. And if you asked to a man anybody in that building, I'm not sure they would remember it. So no, it's all about Jeff Brom was the coach. That was the week we found out that Nick Bosa was not coming back. You know, our defense is really struggling. Chase Young was hurt. Imagine we had Nick Bosa and Chase Young.
Yeah.
But Chase Young was hurt. You know, he had high ankle sprains most of the year. So we didn't get the full Chase Young. And then Nick Bosa, you know, the best player in my mind in the last decade, maybe. I mean, the guy's unbelievable and is not going to come back. That our team and coaching staff and myself, we were floundering at that time, and we rallied back and won the rest of them. But that was a tough time.
Yeah. Yeah. So real quick though, what do you tell a team, you know, going into a game like this? Without a doubt, Penn State is looming out there. You guys are headed back to Ohio Stadium, like you said, next week for Fox Big Noon kickoff for that game. I mean, what a collision that can be. What is the last thing you tell a team before it takes the field for a game like this at Purdue, where they're heavily favored? Ohio State's heavily favored again. What do you remember making sure that teams understood in games like this?
Well, the greatest leaders that I've studied over my career and as a young coach, and I just was always mesmerized because I'm a psychology major, and how do you get, you know, human performance, human behavior was something that I studied and I loved it. And the greatest leaders of good and bad in history are the ones that control the self-talk of your people. And I always wanted to try to control our self-talk. And that's why you heard the 4 to 6, A to B +2. And that was the last thing I wanted them to hear before they took the field was 4 to 6, A to B +2 is, you know, that you want to go win this game, 4 to 6, A to B +2. You want to have a good first quarter, 4 to 6, A to B +2. And that's all about effort. Effort overcomes mistakes. Effort overcomes great teams. If you're playing a great team, effort overcomes a turnover. Effort overcomes, I believe effort overcomes everything. And that was, I wanted to try to control. I didn't want a team to play tight. I didn't want a team to play fearful of making a mistake, because in a football game, there's probably about 260 mistakes made.
Yeah.
What overcomes mistakes? Great effort.
Yeah.
And so that was what I would tell our team. And, you know, did it work all the time? No, but it worked a lot. Is that at the end of the day, if we're the hardest playing team on this field, we'll send a fight song here in a couple hours.
Yeah. Hey, who got your attention more over the weekend? Georgia, the way it, you know, had its first real test, in my opinion. And you talk about taking the field at 100 miles an hour, the way they jumped on Kentucky. I thought that was a convincing victory. But then Oklahoma jumps up and beats Texas. You know, we talked, you know, caused quite a stir in the summer when you basically said on this show that you think Texas has the deepest, most talented roster out there, but Oklahoma's pretty good too. And Oklahoma was able to pull that game out with Dylan Gabriel leading that last minute drive. Well, I mean, what a ball game, right? But I don't know. Is Oklahoma now the for real team in the Big 12? I think they only faced one other big time challenge before playing Texas again, possibly in the Big 12 championship game. But their last big time challenge might be Kansas. But what's your impression of Oklahoma?
We saw them up close and personal at Cincinnati, and obviously the respect I have for their head coach Venable is we've gone against him. I think he's a great coach, and you know, I had a really tough year last year. So I'm actually, it's great to see that. You know, I do believe Texas still will be at the end of the day right there. They'll have to. You just said it. It's going to be Oklahoma and Texas probably in the Big 12 championship, but they're, you know, you're a product of what you did. So that means they're absolutely a top 4, top 5 team. They are knocking on the door, but you know, we're all, you know, coaches are smart. Oh my gosh, the amount of football that's left to be played.
Yeah.
You know, just worry about whoever your next game is and fixing the issues. Right now, every coach in the country, they walk into their office and there's just an incredible amount of issues they're dealing with. From depth to who's not playing well, to some coaches and coaching well, to you just lost a recruit. So the good thing is you don't have time really to think about it. The problem is a lot of times the players, I see them staring at their phones constantly. And I would always wish that I could take their phones from them and make them go sit in the film room, because the phone is nothing but a distraction. And so, you know, I don't see coaches distracted. I see players distracted. I saw it. But that's a coach's job to keep them busy. Idle time is not good.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, even up there on your board now would be NIL. How are we doing? You know, as Mark Stoops pointed out, Georgia can get players we can't get. I mean, that was a pretty bold statement, but pretty accurate too, right?
Yeah, I saw that. And, there's no, how about Kentucky is the third winningest program the last 3 years in the SEC.
Yeah. How
So
about
whatever
that?
he says, you have to listen.
Oh,
He's earned
absolutely.
he's earned that right to say what he has to say.
Yeah.
It's almost like people want to avoid that conversation. I wouldn't if I was him. Reality is that you're not supposed to get players because of inducement and because of promise of play, pay for play. It says right there.
Yeah.
Guess what's going on, Tim?
Yeah.
I'm not saying Georgia because I don't know. I
Yeah.
just on the NCAA right now is it's not supposed to be happening. It is.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's why they're going to Congress again, I think next week to try to get some
Congress. So think about that. Congress will really help.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that right now. You saw my tongue in cheek there. Hey, huge game of the week, man. Who saw this coming? Well, I don't know. I think if you're really watching, paying attention in the summer, you saw that this could possibly be a huge game. Oregon at Washington. Like I told you before we started this, now you got the Pac-12 starts cannibalizing itself, knocking each other off. I mean, Oregon State and Utah did that like a couple of weeks ago and stuff, but you can't spell Penix without the Knicks. You got Knicks versus Penix. This has Heisman implications. This has Pac-12 implications. This has national championship college football playoff implications. It's a huge game, isn't it?
It is, and the last few years when I'd see these teams doing well, I'd watch film, and I watched a lot of film in my life, and I would see that they really aren't. They're really good teams, but they're not national championship level teams. These two teams, and if USC, we can talk about that next, what their struggles are, because I'm actually going to do something on Big Noon Kickoff about it. I mean, those teams are really good teams. I think Washington, that coach out there, DeBoer, and this has come from Kyle Whittingham and others I respect. I don't know him, but he has put together an incredible team. They're all phases are really good. Oregon, that Lanning is the coach. He's done a phenomenal job. This is a real playoff opportunity. I don't believe it was before. These are really, really good teams led by veteran quarterbacks. They're playing good enough defense. They're tough as nails. Their offensive and defensive lines are very competitive, not like they were in recent years. So this is a real one.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk about USC though. You brought that up and stuff. I mean, they got to get that defense figured out somehow, don't they? I mean, that was a real threat Colorado came back on. If they'd saved one or two timeouts, who knows what would have happened. But this is almost a referendum game this weekend, isn't it, Urban?
Yeah, you look at Coach Riley's background, and it's a top four. I think they average, and I'm gonna do this on Big Noon Kickoff. Is they average number 4 in the total offense over his career. They average number 75, I believe, in defense.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time watching him this week, and there's a variety of issues that could cause bad defense. Number one would be personnel. Number two would be scheme. I don't see that. I don't see just scheme or a very simple, Coach Grinch, Alex Grinch is with us. The scheme looks pretty secure, pretty sound. Obviously, there's mistakes made. The personnel, you can't, for someone to say USC has bad players, then you're not very smart.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not playing well. You could say that, but don't say they're bad players. And then the two areas that I've identified are tackling. The last 2 weeks, they have more missed tackles than any other team in the country. 34 missed tackles in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And then I really studied the why. And once again, I don't want to give too much of a foresight of what we're going to cover on Big Noon, but it's the rugby tackling. They're not taking that, they're lunging. They're not taking that extra step, and they're not wrapping guys up, or the term killing the engine. The engine is the legs of the ball carrier. They're not doing that. The good thing is that's a fix. You can fix that. It takes a little bit of time. It takes a lot of effort. The second thing is the defensive backs making a play on the ball. In zone coverage, you should be facing the ball. In man coverage, the ability to read the eyes of the receiver and then go up and make a play on the ball.
Yeah.
If they fix those, we did a stat. If you can fix tackling and that, I mean, you're talking about a couple of 100 yards a game of yardage that can be fixed. Good thing is those can be fixed.
Yeah. But that threat last week of them going down was real, man. Anytime it goes to overtime, I mean, wow. But I'm really curious to watch that game. Hey, my favorite part here before we get out of here, the checkmate moment, as you call it, in a game. I thought it was really that last drive and then that pass by Dylan Gabriel for Oklahoma last week was a checkmate moment, because not only did you kind of expose Texas a little bit with that drive, because I thought the real thing that had come around for Texas this year more than anything else was the defensive line play, because I thought that has been lacking the last several years. And but then all of a sudden, here at Oklahoma, I mean, I was going to use that as the checkmate moment, but Urban, we got to get to a head coach and just it's not knocking him, but every head coach has a moment, don't they, where maybe reality goes out the window. Mario Cristobal sitting there, all they've got to do is take a knee or two and they win. They beat Georgia Tech. Instead, they hand off the ball. And of course, he's been roasted. Mario Cristobal has been roasted every which way you can roast a head coach this week for handing off the ball, having a handoff and the kid fumbling. He goes over how you put both hands on the ball to keep from fumbling. And most people are going, well, why did you hand it off in the first place? I don't know. What's your take on what happened with Miami at the end of that game last week?
Well, that's one that, as a coach, your heart hurts, because that one will follow him the rest of his career.
Yeah.
That was, I remember having to stand up in front of a team after the Michigan State loss, and I just didn't think our staff did a good job. It was raining, and it was, obviously, what happened, and it took me, that's 10 years ago, I think.
Yeah. 2015. Yeah.
I'm still not over that loss.
Yeah.
That eats away at you, because now when you lose a game and you think your team's well prepared and there's, someone doesn't play the ball right, or,
yeah,
that's still awful. But when you, as a coach, because coaches, in the grand scheme of things, coaches come and go. These players got a 3-year window to go win that game. When you win a game and you have to stand in front of the team and say, our coaching staff's decision lost that game, which they did. And, we've had talk about this, maybe doing something on Big Noon about it, but those decisions, it's right in front of you, not in front of the head coach, but there's someone up in the press box in a controlled environment. That means on the sideline, it's loud, it's chaotic. And mine was Tom Herman, Ed Warner, then Ryan Day. At Florida was Dan Mullen. And we would rehearse that. And you simply look at that sheet and there's no one else talking. It's called 4-minute offense. 4-minute offense, the rules are, don't you ever go out of bounds. You take care of that football. You snap the ball with 2 seconds left. You have a series of rules, and don't fumble. They fumble.
Yeah.
But there's also the coordinators saying, okay, it's over. And that's when you would see us go victory. 2 tight ends come in the game, a tailback and a receiver, and you kneel on the ball and you go sing the fight song afterwards. So, I don't, you don't want to beat up people, but that was a tough one. And what's even tougher is the next day standing in front of that team.
I was going to say, getting your team back, right? I mean, because everybody makes mistakes on a football team on occasion. It's more the challenge of a head coach now going, for not just a head coach, but like you said, coordinator, hey, still believe in me, right? I mean, that's kind of tough, isn't it?
Well, I got to tell you a story is that we're playing in a blizzard. There's 2 feet of snow on the ground at Brigham Young when I was at Utah, and I was so angry. We won the game 3-0, and we got our last first down, and I wanted to try to go score. I wanted to score so bad, because first it was our rival, and Kyle Whittingham was screaming at me in the headsets, ran to me and said, kneel on the ball, because I was trying to score. But you have to have people on your staff, and Dan Mullen was upstairs and saying, kneel on the ball. It's over. And of course we knelt on the ball, but that happens. There has to be, from a controlled environment, someone say, stop it, kneel on the ball.
Yeah. A crappy win, a crappy W beats a heck out of any kind of L, right?
Especially that way, yeah.
There you go. Urban Meyer, Urban's Take, man. We'll see you next week. And thanks for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you then.
Thanks, Tim.